tonight. Well said. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the City of Joliet City Council meeting for May 19th, 6:30 p.m. here in the City Hall chambers. Mayor Bob Odekirk presiding. We will be led in prayer by Councilman Pat Mudrin, after which he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I'll stand up. Yep.
Thank you, Terry. God, I am sure we cannot say thank you enough for all the first responders, all the medical professionals, fire, police personnel, and all the essential workers that make our lives complete today. Thank you for our health, for all of us who are not infected with the COVID-19 virus or any other life-threatening health condition. And please see it in your kindness to heal the sick and suffering. Grant us, City Council members, the wisdom to make the best decisions possible tonight for the Joliet residents. And with your help and your wisdom granted to us, the correct decisions will be the final outcome. In closing, God, I know I said last time that we could weather this storm if all of us rowed in the same direction. I didn't mean it literally. I'd like to get out of the boat. Please stop the rain. Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We begin with roll call. Mayor Odekirk.
Here.
Councilman Dickinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Here.
Councilman Hug. Here. Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
here.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Here.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
Let the record show Councilman Dickinson, Councilwoman Gavin, and Councilman Turk are attending the meeting remotely. First on the agenda this evening is a presentation, Existing Conditions Report of Southside Industrial Area Development by Derek Conley.
Before we start this, come on up, Derek. I'm sure there's gonna be discussion about the flooding that happened. We put together a compilation and slideshow, so I think during new business, we'll get into all that, just so everyone knows. Go ahead, Derek.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, the title of the presentation is Existing Conditions Report of Southside Industrial Area Development. As we know, in the past 6 weeks, this corridor, this industrial corridor that we know of, the future of it kind of significantly changed with the new North Point development. So over the past couple of weeks, staff has had numerous meetings with developers and internally about this corridor, and we're asking ourselves, what does this look like today, and what is the future? I think it's a big question for us. So with that, as we were discussing internally among city staff, we thought that it would be best to give a presentation to City Council in order to share, what does this corridor look like today? I think we need to determine first what this corridor looks like today so that we can make better decisions tomorrow. So that's really the goal of this. It's kind of the first step in kind of planning out this area in the future moving forward. So I think the area, it's kind of self-explanatory, south I-80 industrial corridor. I think we know what this generally looks like. You can see on the PowerPoint right now, I have a kind of a slide or a map that kind of shows this area. Basically what we're talking about is south of I-80 and east of I-55. What you can see is, I'm just going to briefly explain the map. We can see I-80, we can see I-55. I have also kind of made it a little bit more clear where Route 53, Route 6, 52, and then Laraway is at, as those are some of our roads that carry some of our truck traffic. You see a lot of bright colors also. Red on the map, that represents existing industrial. So these are industrial buildings that are already constructed and occupied, okay, and occupied. The purple, that is ongoing industrial. So these are projects that you know about. These are projects that are under construction right now. The newest one to be added to this list was Harbor Freight, which received their building permit a few weeks ago. Yellow is very, very important. This is potential industrial, and I do want to make this very clear. This is not saying that this is going to be industrial. This is potential industrial for some reason. It could be that it is already zoned industrial. It could be that a developer has inquired or asked me the question, do you think this could go industrial? It could be that I looked online and I saw that there was marketing material out there that suggested that this could be turned industrial. So it's not a zoning map. It's not saying that city council or city staff has said this is going to be industrial. It's just saying that it could potentially be industrial. We have reason to consider it for being industrial. Before I dive into the map, I want to make a couple reminders about tax revenue. I know the Economic Development Committee understands this very well because we talk about it when we're looking at projects, but how much do we actually receive from distribution centers in Joliet? So it's actually a very easy way to compute this. Basically, it's $1 a square foot is your property taxes. So if you have a 1 million square foot facility, distribution center, your property tax bill is going to be about $1 million. Okay? And of that amount, about 15% goes to the city of Joliet. It does fluctuate from that depending on what area of the city you're in, but about 15%. So if we're talking about a 1 million square foot building, about 150,000 goes to the city of Joliet. And then a question that has popped up recently is e-commerce sales tax revenue. Does the city generate any? City staff has known for a while. Yes, we do. This is because the state sends it to us, and we get money from the state, and it is from some of our e-commerce facilities. So basically, it's a little bit tricky of why we get it. We didn't know why we got this, but basically, if it comes from a Joliet distribution center and it is sold to a consumer or a resident in Illinois, then we get 2.75%, just like you would have bought it at a store, essentially. If it goes outside of Illinois, then we do not directly receive any sales tax for that purchase. It does go to the state. There is another tax, but then it's distributed to all the municipalities in Illinois. I've broken up as we dive into what this corridor actually looks like. We're going to go through and see what's existing, what's potential, what's ongoing. But first, I just wanted to mention also yellow, that is the potential industrial. I have also included on the slides here whether it is already zoned industrial. So some of these properties have already been zoned industrial, so they already have their entitlements. Okay. So the first portion of, or first sub-corridor, I'll call it, of this corridor is the west portion. So you can see where I-80 and I-55 is on your left side, and then on the right side you see the intermodal that is located in Joliet. And then the first thing I want to mention is the Humboldt Bridge, which is being proposed right now, and staff is making great progress on it. This is something that is going to happen, and it is driving development on what I consider the west side of this corridor. So you can see it says Humboldt Bridge right there with black letters with the white background. That's where it's going. Just north of there, so north of the Des Plaines River, we have the Ketone Business Park, and we've had a couple of great projects that have popped up just in the past 6 months there. The first one is Target. So a couple of years ago, there was a spec building that was built by Opus Developers on the north side there. It's 1.2 million square feet. It did sit empty for a while. Earlier this year, Target came in and leased the entire building. To the best of our knowledge, that is the largest spec building to ever be completely leased by one group, all in one shot, that is. So that's 300 employees. Mayor, I know that you were at that ribbon cutting, and that's a great project for Joliet. happy to see those big buildings that are built are actually filled. The other one that happened later, well, I guess the groundbreaking actually occurred in 2019 and is now almost completely done, is GP Transco. This would be
+18157243757 is now exiting.
I'll go on.
Yeah, thank you.
GP Transco, this would be right next to the Target distribution center. This is a headquarters. It is a trucking company, but it is a headquarters, 100 employees, only 40,000 square feet. This is under construction and is near completion. On the next slide, I actually have a couple of photos of what it looks like. Others in the sub-corridor, I'll call it, that you can see on this map. On the west side of the river, you see one red spot there, one building. That is Whirlpool, and that has been there for quite some time. Right next to it, you'll see a yellow area that is currently zoned I-2. Other notables in this corridor is the Mars Wrigley building that is currently the largest distribution center in Joliet. That's on the southern part of this corridor. You also have Home Depot and then Crisco Labs, which isn't a distribution center, but a cannabis grow facility that is also in this corridor. Okay. Still working within this corridor, I mentioned GP Transco. You can see that in the upper left-hand corner. That is what the facility looks like. It truly is a headquarters. They actually have a basketball court in the facility for their workers, which is pretty cool, and you can actually see what it looks like. A very nice facility. Happy to have them in Joliet. To the right of that, you see the Target Distribution Center, just so you can see the size of it. That is 1.2 million square feet. That is completely full. And then there's a small photo there of the ribbon cutting. South of that, you have the Humboldt Bridge, which is the proposed plan right there, just so you can see what it will look like. There will be the bridge, and then there will actually be improvements all the way to I-80. And this, of course, I don't really have to explain this, but this is going to create another access point to I-80 that goes directly into our industrial corridor. The central portion of this, and this is where a lot of the action is. I think when you think of this corridor, this is what people think of. There's a lot of big names in this corridor, existing industrial uses. So IKEA, Amazon, Cadence Premier, that is all along Laraway right now. And then you also have the Dollar Tree and Hasbro, which is on Route 53.
Derek?
Yes.
And Cadence Premier has their headquarters there, correct?
Yes.
That is a headquarters, correct.
That's corporate headquarters.
Corporate headquarters, yes. We do actually have one vacant large building here. It's essentially our only one in Joliet that is of any size. We call it the Core 5 building. That is the blue section you see along Laraway. That would be right next to the IKEA north of the racetrack. Okay, so that is one that we are looking to fill. That's essentially our last one. Now that Target has filled the other empty spec building, that one is getting more and more looks. Under construction, I had already mentioned the Harbor Freight. That would be directly east of the intermodal right there in the purple. And then just south of that, you have the TTX warehouse, which is essentially complete right now. As far as potential industrial, that again is in the yellow. So again, these are properties that have, for some reason, staff has been considering for industrial, not favorably or favorably, but for whatever reason, we've seen a proposal or it's been suggested to be industrial. An important distinction here, though, is that if it has the I-1 on it, or IT or I-2, that means that it is already zoned industrial, okay? Some of these, if it doesn't have those letters on it, that means that it's been considered for whatever reason. We've seen a site plan, someone has asked us about it, but if it says I-1, it is already zoned industrial.
Derek, for clarification, I'm looking at the track, just east of the track is I-1, that property zoned industrial?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So yeah, that clears up the map. Just a couple things that I wanted to mention from this central portion. Harbor Freight, I just put the site plan up there so we can see that is going to be our newest, largest building in Joliet at about 1.5 million square feet or 1.6 million square feet. South of that, I know many council members were at the IKEA grand opening that happened about a year and a half ago. I got a couple photos of that. And then right next to it, to the right of those photos is just kind of zoomed in of where the IKEA facility is now. It's on Lairway, directly north of the Speedway. You can recognize it because on top of the building it has solar panels. That's what those are, which is pretty neat. And then to the west of that is Orange. That is property that is zoned I-1, and that is owned by IKEA. While we have not seen a site plan for it, the fact that IKEA owns it kind of leads us to believe that in the future that could be a second IKEA facility. And then up on top, I do have two photos up there with truck terminals and truck parking. This is just something I wanted to add. These are two developments that you see in Joliet in this central portion of the corridor. The first one is a truck terminal. You say it's a big development. It looks rather large, but it is mostly a parking lot. And then you do have this long, skinny building at the front of it. This is a truck terminal. This isn't for storing goods. This is for goods coming in and goods immediately going out on the other side. Basically, you're exchanging goods between trucks. One thing that staff has noticed is that property taxes for these facilities are significantly lower than warehousing. They're about half as valuable. So even though a development like this increases our truck traffic on our roads, the city isn't compensated when it comes to property taxes. And on the right of that, we have a truck parking lot. This is even worse, so I guess I would say trucks go there and park, and these are things that are needed in this corridor. I should say that many of the facilities do need these to operate. However, the city does not see significant tax revenues from these types of developments. Moving on to the east, or what I would call the Cherry Hill sector. This is Cherry Hill Business Park. You can see I-80 to the north there. Down south you have Lairway. This is essentially a development park that is basically being developed by one developer, and they've been pretty successful so far in attracting a lot of companies to this area. It is actually a business park that is split between Joliet and New Lenox. Some of the existing industrial in this area is Joliet Cold Storage, Hickory Farms, Central Grocer, Navistar, and then total this is an industrial area about 3.5 million square feet. There are some ongoing projects here that I will mention. Up on the upper left-hand corner, there is a shade of purple there. That would be the Love's truck stop that is going in. That is a project that is still moving forward. If you remember, that is a project that is going to require a significant amount of infrastructure that goes in. So I wouldn't say it's really delayed. It's just going to be a long project before you see activity on there. And then the other one is a 424,000 square foot building that is being developed inside Cherry Hill Business Park. That is essentially done. I have not heard if there's a tenant in that building yet, although knowing the developers, I would suspect they have someone at least on the hook. And just a few things that I wanted to share more about this sector. On the left-hand side, you see the marketing brochure for this business park, Cherry Hill Business Park. You can see some of the tenants that they have in there, and then you can also see these lots that are being proposed for development. So this is something I would look at, and with all the industrial around it, I would say that this is something that would be potentially industrial, if not likely. And then on the right-hand side, I do have a photo of that building that did go up in that industrial park, and then what the developer is marketing as far as truck routes in that area. And it's kind of hard to see, kind of small, but they essentially have two routes, one of them going to I-80 and down I-55 and into kind of where the intermodals are, and the other one going down Cherry Hill and across Lairway. So with that, that is my short presentation. Again, right now for today, we are not looking for any type of policy to be made. Really, we would like to see is just, we wanted to inform council of what this looks like, what this area looks like, so when we're making decisions in the future, we can look back on this. So with that, I can take any questions.
Well, Oh, yeah, go ahead, Pat.
On the Cherry Hill one, does Joliet go all the way to Gauger Road, or is that is that New Lenox next to the Gauger
I
Road?
think that part is New Lenox. So I would say a majority of the park is in Joliet, but
Okay.
when you get to Gauger, it turns into New Lenox.
Thank you.
Couple of things. Number one, thank you. I know we had this private meeting.
1181548311746 is now joining.
Are you back on?
Yeah.
Okay, we had this private, so I'm glad you share with the public. What I think I'd like to see come out of this, is some type of, I don't know if a plan is the right word, because there's variables that are beyond our control. Who's gonna sell their property to whom? Do they wanna come into the city? Are they already in the city? But, you know, Councilman Hug, you've talked about the Economic Development Committee really falling off and not having much to do. I don't know the last time you even met. Would this be a project that your committee could take on and try to come up with a plan on future development?
Absolutely, especially in light of the recent approval of the North Point project.
Right. So I think maybe we'll kick it to that committee, not just on an individual project, but just overall, and certainly how aggressive we're going to be with what types of businesses to go into those properties. And then also, you mentioned GP Transco. I'll just repeat this, I say it, but I don't know if it's heard enough. That is the 4th corporate headquarters to come into Joliet the last 5 years. And I don't know of any period in this city's history where we've had 4 different corporate headquarters relocate into the city of Joliet. So that's a credit to staff and to the council, but that needs to be repeated. Oftentimes, there's a misnomer that these are all temp jobs, and that's not true at all. And certainly, I think something else, Councilman, I'd like your committee to get into, because I know John Grueling has worked on this, is educating the public about what these jobs are. There are warehouses with temp workers. There's also, Amazon's pointed to a lot, but the bar's been raised significantly where it was 10 years ago. And I think it would do the city well if we could put that story out and give accurate information about the types of jobs that have come in the last 5-10 years.
Mayor, I have a question, but it'll be for Steve once it's related, but not. In other words, we're shuffling people. Steve, where are we at in the comprehensive plan? Because my understanding would be we got it on hold right now because of the financial consideration of COVID, as far as hiring the consulting firm. So where are we at?
The consulting firm was hired. We had some kickoff meeting events. We started to give the Comprehend consultants feedback. And actually the whole North Point closed loop issue about Route 53 was part of that initial discussion. Once COVID hit, we identified a number of items that would be put on hold just for financial reasons. So in effect, we've notified the comp plan consultant that everything is on hold. So if your committee were to take on the task of looking at these industrial corridors, we could do that as an in-house project. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't have the nuance and perhaps some of the sophistication that a comp plan consultant would have. But to get us through the next year or two, perhaps, I think it would be a good alternative for us to take.
And as far as now, just to keep us based off with the comp plan as we continue to move through it, our contacts should be, Kendall and Mike Schwartz, right? Kendall Jackson, Mike Schwartz.
Right, and Derek, I mean, the three of them work together because there's the land use end plus, as Derek pointed out, the marketing and some of the interaction he's had with developers may not have made its way down to the planning staff as of yet. So I think it's a collaboration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Next is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written with the following change? Vote separately on council memos 300-20 through 306-20. These are all items regarding the purchase of vehicles under award of contracts. Is there a motion to approve the agenda with the following changes that I mentioned?
So moved. So moved.
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
All right,
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Next is citizens to be heard on agenda items. We did not receive any email comments for this section. However, we should have one person on the call.
Good.
Good evening, it's Mayor Odeker. Can you give your name, address, and make your comment, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Mary Beth Gannon, 903 Western, Joliet, Illinois. And I had some concerns about items 300-20 to 306-20. More vehicle purchases, and also the last 3 meetings, it's been full of vehicle purchases when we've got employees who are having to take a cut in their pay, and that really concerns me. When you add up the numbers for your purchases of vehicles this week, it's $1,822,008.70. That's a lot of money, and we're running out of money. I just don't understand the urgency to buy all this now. And I know you can't really explain that, but, you know, we're all trying to tighten our belts, and it just doesn't really seem like council is at the moment. And I have a non-agenda item. I asked Rich if he could call me back, but he wasn't sure, so I'm going to quickly mention it, and if I can't, then cut me off. I had some questions about Mr. Jones. I read the Patch article today, and it looks like he's doubling his salary. This really seems a poor direction to be going in when so many cuts need to be made. And the last thing I wanted to say is we have 2 council members right now who are taking insurance stipends when they already have insurance. And I would ask respectfully that Ms. Gavin and Mr. Dickinson please stop taking the stipends. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other citizens to be heard, so moving on under council committee reports, Public Service Committee report.
Public Service met yesterday at 4:30 here in the City Council chambers. In attendance was myself, Councilwoman Gavin, and Councilman Morris, as well as staff members, Interim City Manager Steve Jones, Director of Public Utilities, Allison Swisher, and Director of Public Works, Jim Trisna, as well as some of their staff. It was a routine agenda for the most part, so I won't be going through all the items. As Krista already indicated at the beginning of the meeting, under contracts, there were 7. I'm sorry, there were actually 11. So the 7 contracts that were discussed were different vehicle purchases. Even within the committee, there was 2 that got no recommendation for lack of a second. Only got that would be first 2 contracts. But to make a long story short, we'll be looking at each of those contracts for that reason, because even within the committee, we didn't have a unanimous on any of them, and we had 2 that couldn't even go to vote for lack of a second. So we'll be approaching those individually. Of the 7 purchases, the last 5 purchases on the list, which are, give me a second, my computer just decided to kick me out. I don't want to refer to them on our agenda because I have to refer to them according to, let's see here.
Counselor, could you please give us some numbers of what you're talking about?
Yes, that's what I'm doing now. Okay. 320, 301, 20, 302, 20, 303, 20, 304, 20, 305, 20, and 306, 20 will be separate individual items tonight. These are all vehicle purchases. 301. 320 will, had no second, therefore there's no recommendation from the committee. 301-20, again, had no second, therefore on the motion is coming to committee, or to council with no committee recommendation. 302, 303, 304, 305, and 306-20, all were recommended to pass in a 2-to-1 vote. Okay? So that's, under the contracts. The other 4 contracts, we did vet, and we did see them to be proper, and were unanimously approved for recommendation for approval to the full council. They have to do with the water for the most part. And the other item that I'm going to outline, as I said, otherwise it was routine, was that we will be authorizing, or we will be talking about authorizing a professional fee agreement for water and sewer engineering services associated with the Compass Business Park, our recently passed North Point project. Now, that's $148,000 consulting engineering that will be paid for by North Point. Okay, they are required to pay. I believe that it's set in stone. They will be paying, otherwise, I think they got 30 days to pay after we hire. But, so that project is moving forward with the consulting that we need, and those types of expenditures are being borne by the developer, North Point. And other than that, I don't think we had anything controversial. You know, we had the bad pumps that we, looked at purchasing new ones and approved them. Outside of the 7 vehicle purchases, every other item got unanimous approval from the committee to send to the council for full approval. The exceptions being within those 7, where 5 only got a 2-to-1 vote and 2 didn't receive a vote as a purchase. I think I've covered what we had. It was pretty routine. What do you think, Councilman? Councilwoman Gavin, anything to add on the committee report?
No, sir, you were quite thorough.
Okay. So unless there's questions, if I've confused anybody, that would pretty much be my report, Mayor.
Thank you.
There are no other reports. Under consent agenda, approval of the special city council financial meeting minutes for April 14th, 2020. Approval of the city council meeting minutes for April 21st and May 5th, 2020. It's recommended these minutes stand approved as recorded. Council Memo 278-20, regular payroll for March 13th through March 26th, 2020. $3,317,887.77. Council Memo 279-20, regular payroll for March 27th through April 9th, 2020, $3,424,968.61. It's recommended said regular payrolls be approved. And invoices paid report, it's recommended this report be received and placed on file. Is there a motion to approve said consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Motion carried. There are no licenses and permit applications. Under public hearings, Council Memo 282-20, ordinances and resolutions associated with Gas and Wash subdivision. Staff is recommending opening the public hearing and continuing the hearing and item to the July 21st council meeting. So let the record show that the public hearing is now open,
It's open. Has anyone signed up to speak about this?
not for this evening.
Anyone want to comment on this?
Nope.
So we would need a motion to continue the public hearing and Council Memo 282-20, which is ordinances and resolutions associated with Gas and Wash subdivision, to the July 21st council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Pullman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Motion carried. So Council Memo 282-20 was continued to the July 21st council meeting. Under ordinances, Council Memo 284-20. These are ordinances associated with Bell Tire subdivision. This includes an ordinance approving the preliminary plat of Bell Tire, a minor subdivision, an ordinance approving the recording plat of Bell Tire, a minor subdivision, and an ordinance approving a special use permit to allow auto tire installation and repair as part of a proposed tire sales facility located at 1301 Route 59.
Mr. Mayor, I'll jump in since this is a combined meeting. Both myself and some staff members will give background as we move through the agenda. This location on Route 59 is part of the Walmart subdivision. It's an outlot just a little bit south of the Walmart parking lot. Bell Tire isn't an entity that's known within this area. It's mostly in Indiana and Michigan, and it could best be compared to like a Firestone auto dealer, auto repair, with tire service, relatively quick turnaround time, and a franchise, which has multiple locations throughout the area. We think they'll be a good addition to the Route 59 corridor. Point out that the ZBA did make recommendation for approval 5-0, and Plan Commission made a recommendation 9-0. So this would be a special use.
Mayor?
Yes.
And the special use is just because it's automotive repair.
Correct.
I mean, it fits the current zoning, if you will, in the area.
Yes.
Thank you.
We do have the applicants available if anybody had any questions for them.
Any questions?
No.
So is there a motion to approve Council Memo 284-20, which are ordinances associated with Bell Tire subdivision?
So moved. Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is Council Memo 285-20, which is ordinances associated with First Presbyterian Church. This includes an ordinance approving the preliminary plat of First Presbyterian Church, a minor subdivision, and an ordinance approving the recording plat of First Presbyterian Church, a minor subdivision.
So moved.
Second. It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Councilwoman Quillman, that's not far from your house, isn't it? It's in your
Right
neighbor-
next door.
If you're happy, then aye.
The neighbors are happy.
Okay. I figured you'd let us know if they weren't.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 286-20, an ordinance reapproving the revised preliminary plat of Clarius Park Joliet subdivision.
Mr. Mayor, this was actually one of those industrial sites that our economic development specialists had highlighted. This is located south of Route 6 on Amico Drive. It's between I-55 and the west side of the Des Plaines River. It's next to the existing Whirlpool facility, and the 3 lots that are being replatted or approved for replatting would consist of a 256,000 square foot building at some point, a 626,000 square foot building, and a 906,000 square foot building. All the zoning is underlying as industrial, and our Plan Commission has recommended approval 9-0.
Is there a motion to approve Council Memo 286-20, which is an ordinance reapproving the revised preliminary plat of Clarius Park Joliet subdivision?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Now, we don't have a detailed plan or timetable, right? This is just a platting?
There were some preliminary indications of building size. There isn't a user, there isn't any sort of time frame at this point. Krista, is the developer on the line?
We can give them a call. We have their contact
I don't have a
information.
question for the developer. The question I would have is how long have we been working with them on this?
I would look at Kendall Jackson to answer that question.
Evening, Mayor and members of the council. we've been working with this particular development since 2007.
And this is not an expiring, like we did a couple of weeks ago. It's not expiring. This has been an ongoing development, and negotiated in good faith in and
Yes.
outside the market as it fluctuates.
Correct.
So it's not brand new,
Not brand new, no.
and it's not, it hasn't expired.
No.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
Oh, I got to vote, right? Aye?
Is that aye? Okay. Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 287-20, an ordinance approving a reclassification of .95 acres at the southwest corner of Mound Road and Hollywood Road from I-2 General Industrial to I-1 Light Industrial zoning.
This particular rezoning request is being done to make this parcel conform with some of the surrounding properties that are owned by this particular property owner. There's no user at the present time, but you'll note that the intersection of Mound Road and Hollywood is also known as Hobart. It's going to be a pretty hot corner. There has been anticipation that at some point a travel center, fuel center would be a logical use for that. There's no user at this particular point in time, but if granted, that's how they would market this site.
Is there a motion to approve Council Memo 287-20, which is an ordinance approving a reclassification of .95 acres at the southwest corner of Mound Road and Hollywood Road from I-2 to I-1 zoning?
So moved.
Second.
Mayor, quick question.
Yes.
Did this go to planning commission? Because I didn't get the notes. I see the memo, but I don't see what the vote came out. There's nothing in my iPad.
Yes, Councilwoman, it did go to the Plan Commission, and there was a unanimous recommendation for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion?
Didn't I motion to approve?
You
Yes.
did,
And
I'm
there was a
sorry.
second.
I've been running in and out, so it's been motioned and
And
seconded.
a second
Yes,
was
thank you, sorry.
Councilman Reardon's.
Apologize for that. Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
I vote aye, but I'm having a terrible time hearing. I'm hearing the toilets flushing and water running. So I can't hear what's going on. It's not on my end, so maybe it's someplace else.
I'm hearing it also. Same here.
No toilets in the council. Please, remove all the toilets.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Didn't the governor do that?
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman?
Aye.
Hold on a second, Krista. We're working. Should we, hold on, give us 1 minute.
Is that better?
That's a lot better, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about the toilet.
Next is Council Memo 288-20, which is an ordinance approving a variation of use to allow reconstruction of a commercial garage in a residential zoning district and a series of variations located at 707 Algonquin Street.
So moved. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the council, in this matter, we have John and Lisa Lawson. They are the property owners. This property was annexed back in 2000. They recently lost their garage, and it was a large commercial style garage, which was lost to a fire recently. They'd like to reconstruct that garage on the same footprint that was approved back in 2000. They did go through the zoning board. The zoning board recommended approval unanimously, and staff is in support of this particular request.
I just would add, they've been longtime investors in that neighborhood with the garage, and obviously what burned down, so I agree with staff.
Just a quick question. So they want to use the, the current concrete pad and similar dimensions to what they had?
Correct.
Okay.
So there was a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second?
Second.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded
That's
to
six.
approve Council Memo 288-20, which is an ordinance approving a variation of use to allow reconstruction of a commercial garage in a residential zoning district and a series of variations located at 707 Algonquin Street. Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye, and Mr. Larson, thank you so much for what you do.
Councilman Hugg,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is Council Memo 289-20, ordinances associated with 562 through 564 Northeastern Avenue. This includes an ordinance approving a variation of use to allow the addition of one residential unit, total of 3 units, in an R3 zoning district located at 562, 564 Northeastern Avenue, and an ordinance repealing a variation of use that allowed an appliance repair business with retail sales located at 562, 564 Northeastern Avenue.
Mayor and members of the council, the property owner on this case is Miguel Garcia. He purchased the property back in January of 2019. He has the 2 requests this evening. One is the variation of use to allow 1 residential unit for a total of 3. There is a 2-unit structure on the property as well as a single-family home. Currently zoned R3, which allows a maximum of 2 residential units, and therefore he is asking for the variation of use. The second matter is repealing the variation of use that was granted to allow a appliance store, which fell into disrepair. The city has been dealing with this property for quite some time. We do have a memorandum of understanding with the current property owner to essentially rehab the property. He has permits that he is currently utilizing to repair the existing residential unit on the upper floor. This request is to allow the lower floor to be rehabbed as a residential unit. There are 5 parking spaces required by ordinance. There's plenty of room on the lot to allow for that. And the public hearing was held before the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals had a unanimous recommendation for approval, and staff is in support of that request.
Thank you. Mayor, just a quick question. Kendall, what type of parking is required then? Gravel, concrete, asphalt?
It would be paved parking, either asphalt or concrete.
Has to be paid.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve Council Memo 289-20, which is ordinances associated with 562, 564 Northeastern Avenue? So moved.
So moved.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye, and thank you, Mr. Gossett, bringing that corner back alive for us.
Councilman Hugg,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 290-20, an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Buildings, Construction, and Property Maintenance, Article 1, Administration and Enforcement, Division 15, Systematic Inspection of Rental Housing.
Thank you. This matter is a request to clean up the ordinance that was approved back in May of 2019. There were some scrivener's errors involving sections of the ordinance being misnumbered, so we'd like to correct that. There was another change, I should say an exclusion in the ordinance, and that was rental registration for certain properties. We had left out dwellings in mixed-use buildings, and that should have been part of what was approved back in 2019. There was, and we're actually recommending approval of this change.
Question. Kendall, we never did finish, it was supposed to come back to us, to land use, about the single-family rentals, and we, kind of got
Yeah.
shoved by the wayside here. Where are we with that? Any place, anything soon, or?
Yeah, so we can bring that back. I think we were, yes, dealing with the land use committee, so.
Because lately, there have been many, many, many single-family homes that have gone disrepair, they're in foreclosure, or they're not foreclosure, and people are just leaving them, and then somebody else is picking them up, well, I say picking up, purchasing them, and just renting them out to anybody. And the homes are deteriorating, and it's a lot of that's going on in the Cathedral area, and I know on the far west side and some of those other subdivisions as well. And we really, really, really need to get going on that, because this is just becoming a nightmare for everybody.
Okay, we'll put it on the land use agenda, the next meeting we can have
Okay.
to start the discussion.
All right, Terry, whenever you're ready, we can have a Zoom meeting.
I'm ready.
Okay, all right, thank you,
Let's
Kendall.
zoom.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion to approve Council Memo 290-20, which is an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Buildings, Construction, and Property Maintenance, Article 1, Administration and Enforcement, Division 15, Systematic Inspection of Rental Housing?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kendall.
Mayor, question for Kendall before he leaves, and it's not related to the items, but, since the councilwoman and the Councilman Morris are talking about, this whole thing is cleaning up ordinances. It's my understanding that when it comes to gas stations in Joliet, as far as getting approval, it's a staff level permit, and that most communities have actually always been or moved to a special use.
Yes.
By vote. Are we in the process of doing that?
We are. As a matter of fact, we're prepared to bring an ordinance forward.
So it's in the committee?
It's sort of come out through the zoning board of appeals to do a text amendment. We can bring that forward to city council.
Is that something that needs to go before your committee? Mayor, does it? Before the legislative or no?
If you want to, I don't know if it's necessary.
It's up to them. It's not my committee. But it's good to hear, because what I understand is, that way we can, as a council, say, yeah, we'll put a gas station there, but we want no truck.
Right.
We feel, right now, we don't have that ability. It's either all or nothing, right?
Well, that'd be land use then.
Legislative.
They're changing the ordinance.
Well, right, but it's, both.
Marty.
It's land use and it's also legislative.
So did you guys want to,
That's up to Terry, he's the chair.
Terry?
No, that's fine. Whatever legal, if you
You
need.
can do it.
Yes.
I mean, it's up to you, but it's not required, put it that way.
We do have zoning board of appeals recommendation for approval of the ordinance, so we could bring that to.
Sure, we can do that.
Just have them review it probably, right?
Yeah.
As a committee. Thank you, because that's something that brought to my attention.
Under Resolutions, Council Memo 292-20, a resolution authorizing execution of a professional fee agreement for water and sewer engineering services associated with Compass Business Park. Steve?
I'll add to a few things Councilman Hug said. He pretty much covered all the dynamics of it. But it's not unusual for very large developments to have studies occur before actual engineering occurs. And part of it is to make sure that the alternatives selected in terms of routing, in terms of pipe size, et cetera, don't have an adverse impact upon city existing infrastructure. So when we talk about engineering, typically think about the plans are going to be drawn up and everything's going to be developed. These are studies. So once the Strand folks look at our needs, it gets transferred over to North Point. Obviously, any final engineering or preparation of plans they do has to conform with that. So it's just a little bit of background of what we're doing. But to reiterate, they are paying for it.
There you go.
Is there a motion to approve Council Memo 292-20, a resolution authorizing execution of a professional fee agreement for water and sewer engineering services associated with Compass Business Park?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Hug,
Aye?
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye. And We hope they pay it back.
Motion carried. Council Memo 293-20, a resolution authorizing a substantial amendment to the CDBG fiscal year 2019 annual action plans to the 2015-2019 consolidated plan.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the council, this is a request from staff to consider a substantial amendment to the block grant program year 2019 annual action plan to accommodate an allocation that we are going to receive from the federal government, HUD, for an additional $536,076 through the CARES Act funding. Great deal of discussion in-house as well as with our HUD block grant consultant in other agencies in terms of how these dollars could be utilized. And what we have come up with is programming these dollars for assistance to families that have been impacted by COVID-19 crisis. From a housing standpoint, and these are low to moderate income families that have been impacted through loss of job or furlough and are having an issue with their rental payments or with their mortgages. We have worked with the Spanish Community Center in the past. They have a relationship with a housing counseling agency that has done a great job in Will County as well as the city of Joliet. And we'd like to partner with the Spanish Community Center to program these dollars to provide additional assistance to these households that have been impacted from a housing affordability standpoint. The second part of this memo lays out another need that we've come to realize through this pandemic, and that is our food pantries have been severely impacted in terms of the services that they provide. We would like to program some additional dollars through the block grant to assist with the relocation of the current pantry that is in the Riverwalk homes. And we've been talking to our partner there, Holston, in order to come up with a plan for relocating that pantry. These are block grant dollars that we would be programming separately to assist with that relocation project. We did have a public comment period that ran from May 1st through May 8th for these funds. We didn't receive any public comments. We would like to move forward as quickly as possible in order to get assistance out there where it's needed. And again, staff is requesting consideration from the City Council to program these dollars.
A couple questions. When you say relocate, can you be more specific what that means?
Yeah, so the pantry, the community center is currently in one of the buildings at the development. That building is slated to be torn down as part of the redevelopment project. So the relocation would be still on site within the development.
Marty, I'm going to bring you into this. Can we vote to spend federal dollars on a property that we own and ultimately is going to benefit us?
Is that what this question is, Kendall?
Well, per the settlement, we have to operate this community center for 20 years.
Yes.
Yes. So, can you repeat the question?
Well, this $563,000 of federal money.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. The $536,000, that's the separate pot.
Right.
And that would be the housing assistance, mortgages and rental assistance. There's a separate allocation, and that would be a little over, I believe, $100,000 from the block grant to assist with the relocation.
Okay, but it's still federal money?
Correct.
So we're taking federal dollars and we're going to vote as a body to spend it on our property and our community center. I'm not sure that that's proper.
Is that accurate, Kendall? Oh, is that what the vote is? Or is it to amend the plan?
The vote is to amend the plan, and by amending the plan, you would be allocating those dollars.
Can we move forward on the larger portion?
You can move forward on a larger portion. The smaller portion, we've actually slated to come back to the city council at a later date with that request.
That's fine. I don't want to be sticking in the mud, but you have to be very careful with federal dollars.
You do?
Yeah. All right, so right now we're approving the plan,
Yes, you're approving the substantial amendments.
but
and then
before
we
it gets
can come back.
executed, it comes back to the council.
Correct.
Okay.
For either one, for the mortgage and rental assistance?
Correct.
And I just wanted to clarify so people don't misunderstand, sometimes they do. When they hear Spanish Community Center, they think maybe it focuses on the needs of the Latino population, and that's not true anymore. It's evolved into being just a community center, no matter where you live in the city.
Correct.
You go there and need help with your rent because of COVID or your mortgage because of COVID.
Correct.
Doesn't matter what race or nationality, doesn't matter where you live in the city, they are a community center called the Spanish Community Center.
Yes, thanks for
Just want to make that clear for anybody
Yeah.
watching that might be in need and thinking, well, I'm not, Latino, can I go? Yeah, of course you can. They're open arms to everybody.
That's an important clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have a question. So Kendall, so when staff got together and discussed this in the Spanish Center, you said you all had worked with them prior?
Yes.
So where does the Housing Authority of Joliet fit in this, or do they at all?
That's a good question. I don't have a good answer for you tonight. But the CARES Act funding is coming directly to the city of Joliet, and not the Housing Authority. So those dollars will be programmed through the city.
Yeah, it's to me, and again, I this is, this week was my first, read about this. I know they handle a lot of the vouchers from HUD, and it just, to me, it just kind of seemed like that, and maybe they're not the one. Again, nothing against the Spanish Center. I think they do a wonderful job, and you all, if you said you all had worked with them before, I was just trying to see if it's where the Housing Authority may have somewhat of a more of an input because they are already working with certain families that getting vouchers from HUD.
Yeah, so the Housing Authority, they are, their clients, their tenants have vouchers that are paid directly by the federal government. So it's sort of a different setup or a different process. The CARES Act funding is a separate program meant for mortgages and rental assistance. The Housing Authority is sort of separate from that world, if you will, because their clients are on vouchers.
Right, but some of their clients have to make up the difference.
Yes.
For that voucher.
Right, but they have the subsidy, which helps. Some of these other families that are low, moderate income do not have a subsidy.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Mayor, one other question. So to be clear on the roughly $100,000 for the Evergreen Terrace or Riverwalk, that's not to buy food for people. That's to pay for the physical move of the development's on-site food pantry.
That is correct, yes.
Is there any way to separate this out? Because, it's no secret that I don't support city grants and dollars going to a privately owned, and it is a privately owned by a public entity, 50% of it, privately owned development. If it was going to be for food for folks both at Evergreen Terrace or anywhere around the city during this COVID crisis, I would be for it. But I am not for using city dollars or city grants to bolster. So is there any way to separate that out?
There is.
I don't want to vote no against the rental and mortgage assistance that has become imperative to many families through the COVID crisis.
Right, so what's before you today is a resolution for that substantial amendment. Now, the dollar amount that's in that resolution is inclusive of the 100,000. So what we could do is split this out, bring it back at your next meeting with just the 536,000.
Would that slow the process of helping these folks?
Well,
Well, I have a chance to vote, we'll have a chance to vote on both of them later.
Correct.
With expenditures. I could vote yes on it tonight and publicly just lodge my objection to the one portion, but vote yes overall.
yes.
I don't want to slow it up to the folks that need it, so we'll go that route. I'm not going to request that we slow it up, no. Thank you, Kendall.
You're welcome.
So is there a motion to approve Council Memo 293-20, which is a resolution authorizing a substantial amendment to the CDBG Program Year 2019 Annual Action Plan to the 2015-2019 Consolidated Plan?
So moved. Question, just to be clear, just to be very clear. It's okay to vote on this, Marty?
Yes.
Okay.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
As previously explained by Kendall very effectively, this is actually one very large lion's share of it is for those affected by the COVID crisis that's affecting so many. And the other one is for an improvement, physical improvement for a privately owned. So I certainly know the importance of getting this aid to those that need it on the mortgage and rental side for assistance, and that therefore I'll vote yes, while noting that I object to the 100,000 or so that's going to private development.
Next is Council Memo 294-20, which is a resolution conveying property at 15 South Caesar Street to Will County Habitat for Humanity.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the council, this is a property that the city acquired off of the county tax auction back in December of 2019. At that time, staff had designated this as a potential rehab opportunity. And as we have done in the past with Habitat for Humanity, we are asking to partner with them on rehabbing this particular single-family house. In the past, we have conveyed property to them where there have been new constructions on vacant lots. This is a little different in that it's an existing single-family home that we recognize was not in too bad of shape, but just needed some rehab, and we have Habitat for Humanity that can help us with this particular project, and we are recommending approval.
Move to approve.
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded to approve Council Memo 294-20, which is a resolution conveying property at 15 South Caesar Street to Will County Habitat for Humanity. Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
I just want to say, although I fully support and appreciate the great work that Habitat does for people to give them a decent place to live, because of my continued involvement with them, I must abstain from the vote.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Mayor and council, thank you.
Thanks, Kendall.
Moving on, under award of contracts, Council Memo 296-20, request for authorization to approve a professional services agreement for the Southeast Service Area Water and Sewer Study to Strand Associates in the amount of $148,000. Council Memo 297-20, award a contract for the lead service line replacement Phase 1 to Stipp Brothers Excavating in the amount of $825,442.35, and for professional services to Baxter and Woodman Consulting Engineers in the amount of $63,000. Council Memo 298-20, award a contract for the lead service line replacement Phase 2 to Brandt Excavating in the amount of $879,165.15, and for professional services to Baxter and Woodman Consulting Engineers in the amount of $63,000. And Council Memo 299-20, request for authorization to purchase a replacement pump for well 5D to Lane Christensen Company in the amount of $54,708. Is there a motion to approve council memos 296-20 through 299-20?
Mayor, real quick, and I apologize, I was remiss in my report, I left out a very important detail. 297 and 298-20 are both part of our ongoing lead removal fuel service lines. Both of those amounts, and they're hefty amounts, 1.7 million, are forgivable loans from the federal government. They give it to us, we spend it on what we told them we would, we don't have to pay it back. So it essentially turns into a grant, and I forgot to mention that earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve council memos 296-20 through 299-20?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye?
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 300-20, purchase of Ford F-250 pickup truck for the Department of Public Works Sign Division to Ron Tirapelli Ford in the amount of $32,789.76.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll address this. As Councilman Huggett indicated, there were seven separate vehicle purchases that were considered last night, and they're all reflected here as well. Two of them died for lack of a motion, and the other 5 were recommended for approval by 2-to-1 votes. This is a continuation of our vehicle replacement plan that was approved as part of the overall 2020 budget. And I know we've gone over this a number of times, but I do think it's important to always talk about the financing end of it. In fact, what we did is we put a spreadsheet within the packet. And even though each of the items has the same spreadsheet, it was there so that anyone could see how the financing this will occur if they just picked up one of these vehicles. In short, we've talked about a $4 million bond issue that would have an annual debt service of about $450,000 or so, depending upon our interest rates. That's a bond that would not be payable until calendar year 2021, approximately 6 months after issuance. In addition, the City Council did approve a 3-cent per gallon tax that was specifically earmarked to fund vehicle replacement. At the time when the budget was approved, we had estimated that that would generate about $1.6 million in total revenue. So if you add the $4 million to the 1.6, we were envisioning somewhere around a $5.6 million program. Obviously, COVID hit. Our finance director has been following IDOT MFT projections as to how the state views the gas sales in Illinois and how we should anticipate finishing up the year with regard to fuel sales. The estimates that we're getting are about a 15% reduction in gas tax because of less sales, unemployment, obviously shutdown, et cetera. To be incredibly conservative in all of our estimates and our planning in terms of purchase and then eventually paying back a bond issue, we've scaled that 15% assumed reduction to 25% assumed reduction. So instead of a $1.6 million estimate, we're looking at somewhere around a $1.2 million estimate as to total gas tax. So if you add the $4 million to the 1.2 for fiscal year 2020, it comes to about 5.2 million. Backing off of that number, we had our fleet services and our various department heads involved in purchase look at that original plan, identify what vehicles should continue to be part of the 2020 program, identify how the cash flow would work. That's what you see in the spreadsheet. So in effect, what we've done is we've stayed within some very conservative estimates with regard to capital expenses, utilizing the bond, utilizing the 3-cent gas tax, and in addition, to be even extra cautious, we put the first bond payment within this amount. So we are very confident that this project could be funded with the revenues that we will be getting, these new revenues. And for that, our fleet services manager, our asset manager, our finance director, our public works director, and myself continue to support this overall implementation of the program. And I know we heard a caller earlier talk about, why are we doing this? Times are tight. We need to cut back expenses, which I'll addressed in my city manager's report, but we also need to do capital. It's not a question of one at the expense of another, it's both need to be done. Many of the vehicles that Public Works has slated for replacement, these are vehicles 20, 25 years old. In fact, some of them have been taken out of service since that plan was put together. So it is our recommendation that all of these purchases be approved. There is funding there. We're confident that these numbers will hold up. And certainly if there's any question on any of the specific vehicles, both Mr. Trisna and Mr. Ulitz are here to answer those questions.
I do have one question, Mayor. Why are we buying a truck from Tirapelli Ford and then 4 others from, where is it, Rod Baker? Why are we not just buying 5 if they're both the same, or all the same?
Did you catch that?
Sure. Okay, Django, you said, why are we buying?
Why are we buying one truck from Tirapelli Ford and then 4 others from Rod Baker Ford? Because they're both F-250 Ford pickups.
Yeah, the one vehicle that we're buying, I believe that was again from Tirapelli. Yeah, the first one.
320.
Yeah, it's for the sign trucks. I'm sorry, the sign division. That one has a few extra features on it for our sign maker. And at least that's why we put that one separately. And then we put the other 4 are all basically, we've got one for the Forester, and we've got a couple for Foreman.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'll just make this comment, and I'll make the comment once. I won't make it on every item. And I'm sure that our city manager won't have the same explanation for every item.
I promise.
We just, there'll be nothing for you, Jim, if you want. Yeah, I got, unless somebody else has got a question.
Okay.
I'm good, thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
We just collectively approved, and rightfully so, a $500,000 safety net to residents in Joliet because of the devastation to our economy. They don't want to lose their apartments, they don't want to lose their houses. I really wish that we could have taken the other 100,000 or so and put it in that lump. I think 100,000 could save another 20 homeowners as opposed to, doing physical improvements to a privately owned development. With that said, I don't pretend to know where we're going to be in August, September. I know what the best case scenario could be and what the worst case scenario could be. This council did a very good job when times were different for many different reasons. From 2015, a little bit in 2014, but the lion's share from 2015 to 2019, we brought in over $8.5 million in new purchases after almost a decade of neglect in purchasing vehicles. And we did that without raising taxes, and we didn't have a COVID. So I certainly agree that this fleet needs to be upgraded. It's not about whether it needs to, it's about whether they're doing it now, as opposed to August, September, October. Mr. Jones had mentioned several meetings ago, well, they have, or actually it may have been Mr. Gadati, we have some pretty low interest rates right now. Well, keep your eye on the Fed, because we could look at August and find out the interest rates are half what they are now with the points. We don't know. I'm not saying we shouldn't buy this. I'm saying each of us should consider why we're doing it now instead of in October, November. In October, we may decide, wow, we still don't have the answer. I'm just bringing that up at one last point, and I am saying that actually the department has, in this case, Mr. Trisna was just up here, defending these purchases or explaining them. That's his job. His job is not to balance the budget. His job is not to set policy going forward on what may or may not happen as a catastrophic result of this COVID. His job is to defend his department. It's our job to say no and say not right now. Let's look at it in 3 or 6 months. So this comment that I've made would apply to all of the 7 of the items for purchases because they're all under the same thing. I think we all recently received an email from a city manager, and I don't want to go into the details about the email. It was but the statement that stood out was no to a certain option on something because once you spend the money, if things get worse, it won't be there anymore. Bingo. That's what we're doing here. Because we do have the right, if things get worse and not better between now and August or October, to take that 3-cent increase and reassign it as an emergency stopgap to anything but trucks. And I really am concerned that we're going to have guaranteed payment on trucks. Are we going to have guaranteed payment to the butts that go in those truck seats? That would be my only comment.
Is there a motion to approve Council Memo 300-20, which is purchase a Ford F-250 pickup truck for the Department of Public Works Assigned Division to Ron Tirapelli Ford in the amount of $32,789.76?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
No.
Councilman Morris.
You know, yesterday we met with the Public Service Committee, and the issue I had with this one particular truck is, unless I misread the staff report, trying to get this thing back on, it was replacing an existing truck, a truck that, from my understanding, meaning that they were using. There's some trucks further down on the agenda that we're replacing trucks that has been taken out of service. And so I don't have to go in there when we get to those. There's trucks that plow. And I know you can't walk into Terry Darcy's place or Mr. Hawk's place and just buy a truck off the floor when it snows. You gotta have these trucks ordered and already purchased and ready to go. And that's why I could, as much as it not having a crystal ball to know where we're gonna be at, could agree with that. But to purchase a truck that is just gonna replace a truck that we're already, this you're using already, to me right now just didn't make sense. So I vote no.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman.
No.
Mayor, because this was a quote, it requires a 2/3 vote to
No.
pass. Motion failed. 5-4. Next is Council Memo 301-20, which is request for authorization to purchase a F-550 service truck for the Department of Public Works Fleet Services Division to Drake Scruggs Equipment in the amount of $116,318.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
No.
Councilman Morris.
No.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman.
No.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
This one was a bid, so it did pass 5-3. Next is Council Memo 302-20. Request for authorization to purchase 4 F-250 Ford pickup trucks for the Department of Public Works Roadway Division to Rod Baker Ford in the amount of $124,977.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
No.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman.
No.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-2. Council Memo 303-20. Request for authorization to purchase 4 2.5-ton dump trucks with plow accessories and V-box spreaders for the Department of Public Works Roadways Division to Rush Truck Center in the amount of $762,604.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
No.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman.
No.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-2.
Mayor? Yeah, real quick, one other thing, and it doesn't really matter at this point because it's hard to, well, it's not hard to explain, but the people that didn't attend the committee meeting don't realize that it's kind of inverted on the list, and it got past me. Just so people know, when they voted to approve 30120 for the service truck, 116,318, this is a vehicle with less than 70,000 miles on it that averages about 3,800 miles a year. And it's required, if I understood the explanation yesterday, along with a trailer that's attached to it, because pushing forward on the immediate purchase of some of these dump trucks, I believe Mr. Joliet had said they can only be towed with that. In other words, those purchases require this purchase. But it's a perfect, a relatively good shaped truck was explained to us yesterday with less than 70,000 miles on it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Next is Council Memo 304-20, request for authorization to purchase 3 2.5-ton dump trucks with plow accessories and tailgate spreaders for the Public Works Department Roadways Division to Rush Truck Center in the amount of $517,533.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Hug,
No.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman,
No.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-2. Council Memo 305-20, request for authorization to purchase a tandem axle 6x4 dump truck with plow accessories for the Department of Public Works Roadways Division to Rush Truck Center in the amount of $198,702.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman,
No.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
No, not at this time.
Motion carried 6-2. Council Memo 306-20, request for authorization to purchase a F-550 car carrier for the Department of Public Works Fleet Services Division to Lynch, Chicago in the amount of $69,084.94.
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second? There's two.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman,
I just want to say, I'm voting no on these projects or these purchases right now because I really don't, I have to agree with Councilman Hug. We really shouldn't be spending money right now until we really get a handle on these finances, especially when we don't know if we're going to have layoffs or furloughs or people aren't even going to be here anymore. So I'm very disturbed by spending all this money at this time. So I'm going to have to vote no on all these, and I'm just saying for now until we get a handle of things.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Oh, probably at a better time under better circumstances, but now, no.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-2. Under amendments, change orders, and payments, Council Memo 308-20, request for authorization to approve change order number 3 for the Rock Run and West Park Interceptor Rehabilitation Project to Visu Sewer in the amount of $46,788.21. And Council Memo 309-20, request for authorization to approve change order number 1 for the Well 29D Rehabilitation Project to Water Well Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $60,978. It's recommended Council Memos 308-20 and 309-20 be approved.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
and Councilman Mudron.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is the city manager's report.
Thank you. The only item I will talk about is sort of a continuation of our discussions that we've had with regard to general city finances and some of our discussions with labor. To give a little bit of background for those who may not have watched previous meetings, as a result of COVID, a number of municipal revenues that not only face the city of Joliet, but face municipalities all over the state, all over the country, have certainly taken a hit. Those have involved sales taxes, hotel motel taxes, gas taxes, basically the kind of revenues that result from people spending money and participating in commercial activities. We're still in a phase where the ultimate losses of revenue aren't known. Because of the natural distribution of how state allocates the shared revenues to us, we have pretty much received the revenues from January, February, and March, which of course weren't the high COVID shutdown months. We know we're getting zero from the casinos. That's an easy one to calculate, $1.4 million of lost revenues per month. But we're not going to really gauge some of the effects of our general fund until later in summer, perhaps even into fall. So by utilizing some estimates of where we think we'll be, how the state has recommended municipalities start budgeting, how the Illinois Municipal League has looked at potential revenue loss, our finance director has come up with a range of somewhere between $12 and $20 million of total deficit expected for 2020. We're preparing now. And even though we have this, inherent disagreement about spending capital, what we've done to prepare now is to look at what general fund revenues, the things that just go into the pot and get spent out of the pot, what can we do to tighten those up so we finish the calendar year with as good a financial position as possible. With that, we had a meeting with City Council, talked about the finances. At that time, the city identified about $9.1 million of total expenses that we thought we could control. Some of those were projects that wouldn't be done in 2020. We used some creative financing with MFT funds. We identified a number of positions that were approved in the budget that had never been filled, that we weren't going to fill. We also started to look at those people on staff who had announced retirements and said, we'll lock those positions down. But that was $9.1 million. As I said, we're at a $12 to $20 million deficit estimate. So we indicated that we really need about $3.9 million, not to take the rosiest perspective of a $12 million deficit, but perhaps to get to $13 million. So we started looking a little bit further, talked to our friends at the various labor unions within the city and said, let's talk. Is there a way that we can work together to do a temporary fix to this $3.9 million revenue gap? Now, some important facts I think need to be spelled out. If you look at the percentage of what the city spends on labor and benefits, obviously municipalities provide service. We don't make widgets. We provide service. So any community is going to have a huge percentage of expense devoted to labor and benefits. In the case of Joliet, it's about 78% of our total budget. So if you do the math, 78% of 192 million, that's a lot of money, and there isn't a lot left. And obviously, cutting 9.1 from that remaining amount starts to really have an impact. So we indicated that we were looking to labor, and both union and non-union, to potentially make up that gap on a temporary basis. Of the total labor cost, and I don't mean labor in terms of union, but labor in terms of employee salaries, about 89% of that is union, and about 11% of that is management and non-union. So clearly, most of the money that is spent within our community, ends up going through, the 6 unions and the great service they provide. But in effect, that's where the money within our budget is. So we sharpened our pencils, did a number of analysis over about a 3-week period or so, started to approach labor, and we'd originally told them we're looking for something that would be a concession up to 4%. We brought that down to 3.85 as we did sharpen the pencil, and we made it real clear that we were looking for this to happen on a collaborative basis. People in Joliet were very well paid compared to some of our peers. I think over the years, the advantage of having 2 casinos and some of the labor rates and the union contracts and just the general wage scales, we've done a great job, but we've also basically had revenues to support salary and wage scales that perhaps are above a lot of our comparable peers. So we said, 3.85%, the city needs something here, it's temporary. It would be equitably distributed amongst all employees. As I said, city manager down to crossing guards. So it's not a question of where, someone's ox gets gored and someone else skates. So we said it would be a way to equalize the sacrifice. We also said, to really reiterate the fact that this would be a temporary measure. How do we know when it's over? We gave a couple of options. We said, if there's some sort of federal stimulus, something that is geared towards revenue replacement, and trust me, there are going to be fire and police and employees all over the country laid off in various municipalities if there isn't revenue replacement at a federal level, just because of the fact that so much of our budgets depend upon commercial activity. So we said, if there's some sort of federal stimulus, whatever that gap is, once it gets filled, we bring that salary level right back to where it was. So that was the first assurance we gave people. We also said another way of doing it, let's say there isn't stimulus, but the revenues start to bounce back a little bit quicker, the casino's open, people have a lot of pent-up demand, they're spending more money than they normally would. If those sales tax numbers come up and those general funds come up, our fund balance will come up. And we said if it gets back to 30 million, and right now we're about 30.5, we started the year about 40. So we've burned through, and this is normal cycle, but the point is the normal cycle happens and then we get all these revenues that come back in. The question is how delayed will those revenues be? So we said if we get back to 30 million, that will then trigger the movement back to normal salaries. So, we acknowledge the fact that people are potentially giving up something with unknowns as to when it'll end and how does the city decide to go back to where it was. We came up with ways where that can happen. So we didn't get an answer Friday. We're still talking. We expect an answer by this Friday. We've indicated that whatever happens, whether it is a collaborative, we all work together, we come up with 3.85, or the city finds 3.9 million of labor on our own, with our own doing, we're indicating that the effective date would be June 5th. So we're waiting to hear. I understand the FOP representative is actually going to call in or has called in, so I'm sure you'll hear some of their perspective as well. But that's in effect where we are.
You said the effective date is June 5th, effective of what?
That's when we would implement.
Implement what?
If we're at a 3.85%, we would look to get salaries reduced based upon that pay.
Plain English, what are you saying?
Well, if everyone agreed, we would basically take pay down 3.85 effective June 5th.
And what if they don't agree?
We have $3.9 million to find within our labor budget.
Okay. And you're going to come back to the council first?
We'll have to chat. We have a council meeting before then. So in effect, we would have names on a list, so.
Okay.
So it's, we're hoping, again, put the context of, we have 15% unemployment out there. We're well paid as a municipality. By doing a pay decrease rather than, suggesting furloughs, it means that the same number of hours are spent on our residents, and we're not decreasing services or creating overtime. or really impacting our residents. I think if we all took a 3.85% hit, in effect, we're telling the community, you know, we're here for you. We're doing what we can to maintain our workforce. We're committed to what it is we do for you. And when times get back to normal, we'll get back to normal. So that's been the philosophy and sort of the themes that I've hit the unions with. So that's the end of my report.
Yes. As the city manager, have you instituted a moratorium on overtime outside of that which is necessitated for emergency?
We've reduced the overall expectations. I mean, we haven't locked anything down right now. And I think the key is, you know, on June 5th, that becomes part of the toolkit with regard to expenses. When you're in negotiations, you have to kind of be careful what you're doing, and I don't want to get accused of, you know, somehow affecting certain aspects of employment while we're negotiating. So really, June 5th becomes a lockdown date if we're not in a cooperative solution.
Anything else?
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Next is new business, not for final action or recommendation.
New business, Betty?
No, I have nothing, sir.
Mike?
Nothing.
Don?
No.
Terry?
No, sir.
Larry?
Did you say there's going to be a presentation tonight about the flooding?
Yeah.
I'll address my concerns
Okay.
during or after that.
Jan?
Yeah, I would just like to add that I did get some emails and phone calls about Route 53 viaduct and asking if we have any influence over IDOT for not to put a Band-Aid on this thing, but to really fix it up right, so.
Well, you know, not only that, again, I-80 is a disaster. If you've driven on, and it's nothing
Yes.
new, but I mean, I'm in a pickup truck and I think I'm gonna blow a tire out on I-80. I know some of our state reps are worried about telling us what to do. Can we tell them what to do and get the roads fixed? Is that possible, Steve? Maybe we should call a press conference and do press releases?
We could tell them anything. It's a question of whether they
Yeah,
listen.
they love telling us what we're doing wrong. How about fix the roads? That'd be great.
And that's what I tell folks, and they say, we understand it's a state issue, Councilwoman, but if you have any influence, please, please, please tell them to fix it. And I said, well, you need to call your state legislatures, because this is, again, we can try, but it's a state issue.
But, yeah, no, it's bad. And I just, last week, a lady contacted me. Her and her husband blew a tire out on I-80, hitting a pothole. I mean, that's how people die, doing 70 or 80 miles an hour and hitting those potholes. So it needs to be addressed. It's not our road. We can't put crews out there to fill in the potholes. There's nothing we can do.
No, you're correct, Bob. No, we don't have the authority to be out there. We will not be out there. We have our own issues, our own roads to deal with. That's their issue.
Okay.
I'm just going to mention about South Chicago Street briefly. The district engineer called me yesterday about 11:15 in the morning and filled me in on what happened there. It wasn't just a flooding issue. Obviously, everybody was aware that South Chicago Street's been closed generally from I-80 south to Doris Avenue. And that happened from all the rain over the weekend. But on top of that, what they found out is once the water started receding somewhat, this water got underneath the pavement. I think they had overlaid it a couple of years ago, that section of road, and it popped up big sections of pavement. I know our fire department did a video. Some people, I think some of you folks may have seen the video. Greg Blasky sent it out. You can see big segments of pavement. So anyway, Mr. Quigley, the district engineer, told me they were working on getting an emergency contract. They obviously had to, the water has to go down. They got to get the water out of there. They got to excavate out the heaved roadway, so to speak, and then they're going to come back in and repave. May have to do some repairs on the base that's left, but he was hoping to be done this week. Didn't give me a time frame. Obviously, they've got to make sure the water goes down first, and then they've got to get the material out of there. It's going to be dry enough so they can put their new asphalt down. It's going to be dry. That's the last I've heard. The only other thing I did hear is that there was an emergency contract awarded. I didn't hear to who. Not our prerogative, but that's. And obviously, they know it's a pretty hot ticket here in Joliet, but all the vehicles that go back and forth that way could be intermodals.
Thank you for the update.
Sure.
Pat?
No.
Okay, we can start. How many slides are in this show?
We have like 10.
10?
And
All
we
right,
have
yeah.
a video as well, so.
Okay, this is a real, I gave you a synopsis of the type of emails I've been getting the last 2 days. These are various subdivisions on the far west side of Joliet. There's a couple slides, I may tell you to stop it. This one right here, if you can pause that, I'll go back to it. That fence has gotta be a 4-foot fence, it's completely underwater. Can you go to the next one? If you could see the rapids, I'm sorry, go back one. So this is, you know, and come on in, Jim, Mike, you can come in too, we're not breaking any rules. I know this isn't a city mistake, at least I don't think it's a city mistake. We didn't engineer these subdivisions. We have oversight over the engineering, correct?
That's correct, yeah, we did, the city does not, any of this new development, the city does not design the subdivision. The developer's engineer designs it, we review them, he has, their engineer has to stamp the plans, he has to indicate that he's addressed the drainage in the area, what's on the site, can be on the site, and what comes at the site. But we review it, and that's as far as we go, basically, make sure everything seems in order.
So,
Quick question.
And we don't design it either, it's
Yeah.
obviously designed, I'm sorry, we don't construct it either, that's all constructed by the developers.
Do the developers go through the Army Corps at all when they're putting together a large?
If they're, yeah, they do, if they're dealing with like any areas like in floodplains or, actually have, a waterway such as
So
like the
out west,
DuPage
they would have
River.
had to do that back then because of the waterways we have out there.
Yeah, yeah, they did at times, yes. And if they're impacting any waterways at the core of the US, they have to deal with the Corps.
so, you know, this is a safety issue. People are gonna get killed. You see the last slide with the little children's tricycles on the other slide before, on the other side of the fence. We have to do something. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not an engineer. And I don't know what our options are legally, Marty. Maybe, if we have to, one person I talked to today, I thought had a great idea, but eminent domain, if surrounding properties aren't gonna work with the city and build retention ponds, then we should start pursuing that, because this can't keep happening. And I know it was a bad rain Sunday, but this has happened 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years. So I'm opening up for discussion. I think it should go to the Public Safety Committee. I think a plan should be worked through, specific plan. Marty, I think legal needs to be involved about what our options are. But I mean, this is intolerable. And again, it was a horrible rain, but my street didn't look like this.
Sure.
And I don't think anyone else's in here did, except for 4 or 5 communities on the far west side of Joliet.
Again, this typically happens on the fringe of Joliet, or the fringe of any part of our city, whether it's far east, far south. The areas where there's not a lot of development, there's not enough detention. More particularly, the subdivisions we're talking about here are all adjacent to a farm field. Farm field's not been developed, and you get excessive rain coming off the farm field. And a lot of times you get also, then beyond that, you end up getting the debris from the farm field, the crops and the stalks and things. This one, I think, I'm pretty sure that's the Mirage subdivision. We've got a couple ideas. I think Larry wants to speak about that. Believe me, we've looked at a few of these already, and it's happened. You're correct. And as a side note, we're having excessive rains. I mean, I'm not a meteorologist, but it's my little hobby, as a side note. I'm not being funny, but it is my hobby. And this year, I think they've already said we have now broke the record for the most rain in the month of May.
Right.
And we're not through May yet. The second most was last year, 2019. The third most was 2018. I mean, we're getting, I keep telling everyone to listen to me, we're getting these extreme events, so we're getting more of these excessive flows. But that all being said, yeah, we got a couple ideas. We think we can try to do some things. But again, it's in the fringe of town. It's not, like you said, where you live. I live right smack in the middle of Joliet, like you and Councilman Mutter and a few of you folks here. Councilman Quillman. We don't have this issue. We're fortunate.
I was lucky, I just had a mini lake.
Yeah,
Mini lake
I
Quillman
had a
in the
little, I had a
backyard.
little lake in my far backyard too,
Yeah.
but we can live with that. So.
Very
Well,
fortunate.
and Bob, I want to comment when Jim's still up there, and Jim can attest to this. I'm going to be direct. We've tried to do it below the radar, cordially, dating back to 2011 when I first got on this council. We did make some headway through the efforts of Jim Trisna and Jim Egan at the time, where we actually, this area you're looking at, Bob, believe it or not, it used to have not quite this depth, but bad flooding at 2 inches. So we did mitigate some of that, but I'm just going to say it publicly because we've worked behind the scenes and it hasn't worked, has it, Jim?
Not well enough.
you've done pretty much everything you can. You have a concept of trying to dig out the ditch a little bit, more. It's going to be just scratching the surface of a storm like this. We have out there, unfortunately for the residents, and Marty will chime in when appropriate, and we've been dealing with this. He already mentioned that it was Mirage. That's the most hard hit when it comes to these types of floods.
Aspen Falls was hit hard this time, too.
But
That's where I got the phone calls from.
right, that's the same one.
Okay.
Yeah, it is
Well,
the same. They got different names to it, Jan, but
Okay,
it's
they're all
it's the
together.
Cape Farm and county line.
Councilman,
Yeah.
that subdivision was built, originally started by one developer, then sold off to another developer, then sold off to another. That complicates some of the issues on getting everybody on the same page sometimes, because like 20 some of them, of the homes in there, don't belong to the homeowner association. They have no say in, So what has happened is you have a series of ponds, and for those watching and a lot of people don't realize, maybe even on the council, if you have flood control, in other words, ditches and ponds don't belong to us, but ditches, that belongs to Public Works. If you have storm sewers in a pipe, that belongs to public utilities. That's a fact. I've learned a lot. I've become an amateur, right? And what you have is a series of detention ponds. And some people don't realize there's a difference between a retention and a detention. Detention is temporary, right? Until, when you have a big rain like this, to hold it and allow it to pass through. Retention means it's always going to have some water, and that's what people like to go fish, because it holds some water all the time. And you have these ponds, and these ponds are not just haphazardly put out there. They all lead to one destination, the river.
Correct.
They all lead to the river. From one subdivision to the next, they're either going through open flowing ditches or through pipes, okay? Now, what people don't realize sometimes, and I try to educate them, I'm going to do it very publicly now, the retention and detention ponds do not belong to the city. We have no authority over them. They belong to one of two situations. They either belong to the homeowners association, and most people don't know this, and I know this as an insurance agent, and I bet you Councilwoman Reardon and Councilman Mudrin would know the same thing. In areas that have either a defunct or no longer have a homeowner association or never had one, the surrounding owners are deeded that at the conclusion in a pie shape into the middle of that retention pond. They own it. That's their risk. With that said, in this particular subdivision we're referring to, Mirage, if you want to call it, or Aspen Falls, we have one or two that have no grade on it. And they flow good. Then you have several going towards the river that have a grate that, because of the farmer that we can't control and the debris that comes off when it's raining hard coming off, they get clogged very quickly, and that's what causes at least half this flooding. Now, we have approached the homeowners association management, not the elected officials, not the residents, the management, because they make the decisions on the maintenance, and they have refused to remove the grates. So this will continue to happen. Marty, do we have any legal avenue as a city, or is it something that the homeowners would have to do to go to the management and say, you need to mitigate these grates?
That's a very good question, because actually I was one of the flooded out people. We have a grate, and it would be very nice for the grates to be cleaned. Right? But then the problem with that is then you got there's risks on both sides.
And you got some flooding in your subdivision. I mean, we had, 6 inches or more water in some parts of the city?
Yeah, well, we had
Right.
You step up, Jim, please.
I'm sorry. We had 4 inches in part of Joliet just on Sunday alone. We had 5.5 in some parts far west. We had rain gauge readings from out there. I also remember, if you remember right, it rained about 1.5 inches here on Thursday. The ground's saturated. I mean, it's like a parking lot now.
Right, but let me just interject one thing so we stay on point and focus here. I had a woman today talk about how out at Mirage, and I know particularly which one of two detention ponds she's talking about, where they had waist-high water and they're trying to clean the stalks. Marty, I don't know how bad it gets out by you. This is a common occurrence out there because of the farm field, which is unincorporated and we have no control over. Right. What happened is some of the older folks our age were doing it. A couple of young teenagers came and physically, and these grates aren't light, they're wrought iron. Moved the grate, and like a toilet, it went away. Had that grate not been in there, they wouldn't have had half this flooding.
All right, well,
we are actually working with the HOA person from the Mirage.
And please, because I don't want it to be walked backwards where it sounds like I'm being too harsh on it.
No, we've
been working with the management, not the association, the management company, going back to 2011, May, when I first got elected.
Sure.
And back then they refused to help, and they're only hurting the residents that have hired them to manage their we have to get some relief for these residents if the management, don't blame the HOA, those that are the residents who are running for and elected to their board. It's the management company that, kind of like a city manager, is responsible for the day-to-day operations and decisions like this versus the council. So I don't want to walk that back. No, we've been doing this since 2011, Jim.
Yes.
And these
Yeah, we have.
houses are continually getting flooded. And I want to know if we have legal action, because these people are very upset, and they should be.
I like the idea of eminent domain. It's the first I've heard of that. That's actually, Mayor, a very good idea. We'll have to look into
It
that.
came from a resident. It is a good idea
You mean the eminent domain on,
On the farm field to stop this from happening.
to dig another pond and stop it from happening.
Okay.
Because that's a public use.
It will be public
So,
use.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just gonna say about the grates. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember back when these subdivisions were going in, there was some discussion whether they should have grates and shouldn't have grates. And a lot of these folks that live in these subdivisions at that time were insisting on the grates for safety reasons for their children. Wasn't that the issue?
That's kind of what precipitated the grades, exactly.
Yeah, that's what
And
happened.
that was an
and to be
issue.
clear on this, Councilwoman, for the specific subdivision we're referring to, some do and some don't. There's no
Right.
consistency.
No, right, but it depended on the subdivision itself.
Now, in this subdivision, there's a series of 3 lakes, Larry, actually 4. There's actually one
Right.
right at the corner of County Line and Desert.
Fourth.
There's 4 they go through before they get out to Caton Farm Road. And the pipes they run through are very massive. They're about 5 feet to 5 foot diameter pipes. They're very big. You could, walk through there without bending down too much. And this would help tremendously out here. It would help get the water flush. Like you, Councilman indicated, when those kids pulled part of the grate off and it
Boom,
cleaned off,
like a
it went
toilet.
down. I'm sure it went down quickly.
emptied.
Yeah.
She said within minutes. You could just swirl, and it was dangerous swirling because there was that
Yeah,
much water.
you gotta get through
And what Jim and his staff has done, Mayor and Council, since 2011, is whenever they have been called out, when something happens, although it's fairly predictable that in bad rains you're going to get the debris depending on from the farm field, depending on the time of year. Even though it's actually a liability issue for even more comp, we've gone in there a few times and cleaned them up, helped them clean them up.
We have.
We unfortunately can't always do that as a liability issue, and the removal of the grates would solve. Like I said, they've mitigated it as best they can. They put up what we call a strainer, which is effectively a chain link fence, bordering what is it, 60,
It's like
80
County
foot,
Line Road.
right?
West
But
side of the road.
once the water from the farm field comes off
It
and
builds up
clogs
so
it up,
much, it
then
goes
comes
around it then, yeah.
So it's not,
It does.
it depends on how much rain you get. Eminent domain, this is the first I've heard. I've been looking for a legal solution since 2011, and nobody's ever mentioned that as a possibility. I thought, being unincorporated, we'd have to get the county's permission to do such a thing. And that's Kendall County versus right across the street is Will County, right?
I think, look at this is a public safety issue. I believe in one of these subdivisions, they had to shut the power off because the water levels were so high. But I would like this to go to the Public Safety Committee and with the help of legal, come up with a plan on what we're going to do to help these people. This can't, I just can't say it again, this can't keep happening.
No.
Understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's my new business.
Next is public comments. Earlier today, we did forward the emails that were received for public comments this evening, and we do have 3 citizens who have registered to be called, and I think they are queued up.
Ready? This is Mayor Odekirk. Can you give your name, address, and comment, please? Hold on 1 second. Is this all callers or just this call that's muted?
I believe they're all muted at this time.
All right.
It's Dan that is muted.
You want to do council comments first?
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, council comments. Betty?
I have none, Your
Mike?
Nothing, Mayor.
Don?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks to all the first responders. This last couple of weeks, they've had their hands full with things and they come through shining. So, I'd just like to say thank you.
Terry?
Nothing,
Larry? No. Jan?
I have several.
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, Mayor, I'd like to bring to everyone's attention, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And the Joliet Firefighters Peer Support Group encourages you to please remember to take your mental health seriously, especially during this difficult time. Stress reactions are common and normal and not a sign of weakness. If you need help, there are many organizations locally here that you can turn to. For example, the Upper Room Crisis Line, Aspire Center for Positive Change, and the Will Grundy Crisis Line. And we will be posting these numbers on our website later. If you're suicidal, please call 911 immediately. And if you're in need of help, please, please, please talk to somebody, call somebody, contact someone. There is hope, and many mental health challenges are treatable. So please, people, I know it's hard. You've been home, isolated and everything, and it might be hard, and some people are just alone. People are there to talk to. Please take care of yourself, and everything is kept confidential, and it is not a sign of weakness. Just wanted to put that out there. Number two, if you've seen blue ribbons around town, here's one especially. You can make these out of plastic tablecloths. They're $1 at the dollar store, and put them up in your homes or on your trees to show support for not only essential workers, but the medical professionals and also first responders. Number three, please have a blessed Memorial Day. Be well and stay safe. It's going to be very difficult for some folks. So reach out to people that you know are in need and have lost loved ones during this terrible crisis. And on a personal note, I'd like to wish my husband a very happy anniversary to me. He's put up with me for 40 years. He's a wonderful man, and my mom used to say, when they made him, they broke the mold. So, love you, Mr. Tom Quillman, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Just a quick update, Marty, I'll ask you to jump in. Friday at our regular press conference, we announced a plan that we have submitted to Governor Pritzker to start reopening restaurants. I have not gotten a response yet from the governor. We are working on additional plans for other businesses in Joliet and for churches. So I'm not sure how it's going to be received, but I have gotten compliments from other elected officials and other mayors about what was put together here. Thank you, Marty and staff, for doing that. And again, I think, I want to be, and I do think the local media reported very fairly. This is not an affront to any other elected official. This is in the spirit of cooperation. I think most people would agree with what happened back in March with the lockdown, the shutdown, not knowing what's facing us. 2 months into it, I think we have a better handle. And we also are very leery of what's happening financially. So it's in that spirit of trying to work in collaboration with the governor's office and with the state of moving the city forward, and we're going to continue to try to do that. So I want to thank everyone who was involved, and staff, and our first responders, and our essential workers throughout Joliet, at the stores, at the hospitals, everyone who's pulled together. So thank you, everyone. That's all I have. Do we have the calls fixed?
I didn't get.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sherry.
It's okay.
Sorry
I just
about
wanted to say that I also received so many emails. This is a large part of my district was affected by this flooding. I was out there to look at it, and it was devastating. And I just want everybody to know that we mean what we say up here. The city is behind you, and we're not going to forget about you. We'll get something taken care of. This can't happen again.
Well said.
While we're waiting, I'm going to ask the council that is attending remotely if you can unmute your mics on your iPads.
And along these lines, Steve, I know I talked about last week. I think in June we should go back to the regular format, the Monday, Tuesday format. I don't see any reason why we can't do that, unless there's objection from anybody. Well, these three can't be heard, so I guess.
Certainly, if that's council's pleasure.
Well, just things like this, I know the phone calls aren't going to change, but City Hall is still closed. I don't see any reason why, in a closed meeting, why we can't have the council in attendance and do the Monday, Tuesday meetings. And now we're waiting on phone calls.
Yes, for those waiting, we're having some technical issues, so it will be just a moment. Let's see, if you want to just put them on the mic.
Tell them to hang up, I'm just gonna call them to rise. Sorry, Mayor. Kathy Abraham from City of Joliet, I had the city council here, did you want to speak in public comments? Okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker here, we were having some technical issues, put you on right now, okay? Okay, you have 4 minutes, thank you.
Dave, should you up there, or you're good there?
Okay, this is Mayor Odekirk. Can you give your name, address, and comment, please?
Yes, Kathy Spieler, Joliet, Illinois. Good evening, everyone. Just a few things tonight. First, thank you to Mayor Odekirk and our city staff for keeping Joliet running during the pandemic. And the mask giveaway last Saturday was a wonderful program to do for Joliet residents. A big thank you to our Will and Grundy building trades. Also, thank you, Mayor, for the weekly press conferences, including our hospitals and our Joliet educational leaders. It's much appreciated. And an extra thank you, if I heard Councilwoman Quillman right, and Kendall Jackson, we may be talking about single-family rental homes being inspected again. If this is the case, I am very glad to hear this. Last year, Quinn and I came before council and asked about this. In my neighborhood association, at our meetings, many neighbors have been asking about it and complaining, so hopefully that will get done. Also glad to hear about 15 Caesar Street. That was Gorley's house, and it has been vacant for so long. I'm glad that Habitat for Humanity will take it over. Now down to business. At this time, there was a request to have our city employees' pay cut by 4% to save money. Well, I have a much better idea on how to save money. A while back, there was a vote to grant $6.5 million for library remodeling. I disagreed with it then, as I do now. In light of everything that's happened, I'm asking that you rescind the vote that was done for the library. We could use that $6.5 million to pay our city staff and basic city services. It's more important that we care for our current city employees than to have a library redecorated. Now, how do we get that library rescinding on the agenda? Do we need petitions? Please let us know. Also mentioning again about the Campbell Street firehouse that's not in use. It'd be a good idea for the city to sell it and use that money to fix the main firehouse that needs a new roof, which is very important. I'm understanding that there's items there that need to be stored. If there's an issue with that, perhaps you could talk with the school districts that most likely will be closed down through the fall, I would think, to see if you could borrow some space. And next, I wanted to say thanks again to the 5 and Mayor for voting yes to North Point, and to mention that that new bridge from North Point would certainly have come in handy with the natural disaster of flooding that we had yesterday on Route 53 under the viaduct. And speaking of North Point and the $5 million negotiated, I don't know if this is true, but some people online have been saying that this money has to be used towards city improvements. If this is the case, it would be a good idea to buy the new street sweeper out of this money instead of our regular budget, and then maybe you could use our budget money to keep our employees going. So that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dave Ray in the city of Joliet. Did you want to speak at the council meeting tonight? Okay, I'm going to put you on speaker. You have 4 minutes to speak, okay? Mayor, we have Audrey on the phone.
Ma'am, this is Mayor Odekirk. Can you give your name, address, and comment, please?
My name is Audrey Secco, Joliet, Illinois. I want to speak on a few subjects this evening. And first, I'll start by asking the same question I've been asking since July of 2019. When are you going to get a permanent city manager in place? And why are you insisting on giving Jones an exorbitant amount of money as interim city manager when his original contract required him to do the city manager job if needed? None of you have ever answered those questions. And Councilwoman Gavin, I feel you speak from both sides of your mouth. Last May, you voted to fire Marty, as you said, just to get this over with, and you wanted the best person for the job. A year later, you haven't found the best person for the job. Apparently, you've proved the point that there isn't one better than Marty. You were in a hurry, now you're not. And again, I'll say, Marty did a great job and came a lot cheaper in the long run than Jones, who is milking the city taxpayers with his special big dollar contracts the Mudron 5 gave him. Second, I'm going to briefly comment about your latest vote to buy new city vehicles. The claim that they were badly needed, but yet the city and state are struggling to make ends meet because of the COVID pandemic, did nothing to stop you from spending that money now. First, a month or so ago, Mayor Odekirk gives a speech that next to no money is coming in because everything is shut down. And you people turn around and vote to buy new vehicles. How is that fiscally responsible? How do we know what it's going to be like in a few months from now? You didn't consider the hardship on the city or the burden on the taxpayers. I question your decisions on spending money, as I have personally seen how one or two of you have run other businesses you've been involved with into the ground. It's sickening. And last, I want to speak of the crime starting in the city. What exactly is being done to deter that? In the past year, I have had 3 incidents personally affect me. The first, last summer, I found doper needles discarded in my backyard, at least 25 or 30 of them. Then last fall, a vagrant homeless man decided to use my front yard as his bedroom for the night. We called the police on him. 2 weeks ago, there were some young men on the side of Essington Road across the street urinating on the neighbor's bushes. Now, Councilwoman Reardon, there is only one house between yours and mine. If you aren't concerned about these types of incidents, I'll start sending the vagrants up to your yard to sleep, and I'll tell the young men, go use your yard as a toilet. There is a group of you on this council that like to come up with ways to spend money where it is questionable at best. The Mudron 5 have been so creative on ways to foolishly spend city dollars. I challenge you 5 to come up with a way to give residents more police protection. Make Joliet safe again. Thank you.
Thank you.
This will be the last caller.
Tamara, Dave Ray in the city of Joliet. Hi, do you want to speak in public comments? Okay, I'm going to put you on speaker. Hold on a second. Mayor, I have Tamara on the phone.
Ma'am, can you give your name, address, and comment, please?
Yes, Tamara Cummings, with the FOP Labor Council, address 5600 South Wolf Road in Western Springs. And I am, first of all, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councilwomen and Councilmen. Thanks for letting me speak. I am commenting on behalf of the patrol union, who I, as an attorney, represent. I'm counting on their behalf to voice concerns, or perhaps more, a better word is frustration, over 11 pending discipline cases that have been pending for some time now, ranging everywhere from a 10-day suspension to termination cases. In each case,
per the contract, the officer opted to appeal his discipline through the police board. They each filled out the form, they each had the form notarized, and they each turned in the form. And to date, nothing has happened. Per the contract, in order for the police board to hear discipline cases, charges must be filed in order to give them jurisdiction. And no charges have been filed to date, so the police board can't move forward. So we're just sort of in a deadlock. We realize that the COVID has caused understandable delays in some areas of government, but all of these cases arose well before the pandemic. Most of them are very, very old. One's almost 2 years old. I'll run through real quickly. We have a 10-day suspension that's been pending since December of 2018. A termination case has been pending since February of 2019. A 30-day suspension case has been pending since January of 2020. A 25-day suspension that's been pending since September of 2019, and a 12-day suspension pending since September of 2019. And then we have 5 other suspensions ranging from a 12-day suspension to a 30-day suspension, and another termination case that have all been pending since January of 2020. We're concerned, we're frustrated and we're concerned because, first of all, I think these officers, especially the officers facing termination, have a right to a prompt resolution of their cases. If you might recall, it's been the last time we had termination cases pending, which was well over a year ago. Charges weren't filed properly then, and people voiced a lot of concern, rightfully so, that the process wasn't being followed and that the process wasn't moving quickly. And here we are over a year later in the very same place. And I just want to point out that this isn't only jeopardizing the members who are affected in our union. Frankly, it also jeopardizes the administration and the city, because in these cases, the city has to prove the case. And, anyone who's got familiarity with cases knows that the more the time that goes by, the more likely you're going to lose witnesses, or witnesses certainly aren't going to remember pertinent events. So I'm not sure what the problem is, and frankly, we don't know where else to voice our frustration, but I'm doing that today, and hopefully you'll do something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Along those lines, Marty and Steve, I got a call from media yesterday, and I know police and fire board members have got a call about this. The termination case from February 2019, that employee is still on the payroll, correct?
What's the name?
I don't know the name, and I wouldn't say it, but.
Let's assume yes.
Right, and Marty, do you have any answer what's going on with these, or why?
I can be crystal clear on this in terms of what the rules say. So I'm just gonna, for the termination, there was maybe some confusion prior, like a year ago, and I became, of course, I was in the interim manager position. So in January of this year, I started getting more involved in this. Took a look at the rules, and it's very clear that the chief must file the appropriate charges before the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners.
Okay.
So I made that clear to Steve and the chief.
All right, well, can we get an update the next meeting?
Yes.
These should be filed?
Yes.
Especially if someone's sitting at home collecting a paycheck.
Yeah, I hit
For some reason, a couple cases, there was a big controversy, but no one seems to care about these cases. I wonder why. I don't know.
I had a discussion with the chairman of the board of Fire and Police Commission today, and we started a little bit of dialogue as to hunting the route, and we'll definitely get an update to you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Do you mind if I comment?
No, go ahead.
I was going to bring it up. I forgot to bring it up during new business, but then one of the callers or residents brought it up. Anybody wants to raise their hand. There's still a lot of people questioning where we're at with the city manager. I don't know if anybody agrees or disagrees with me up here. I get questions like, for instance, the other day it was, as a council, you're going to pick one of those 2 finalists. Someone else thought it was 3 finalists, because we kind of did have 3 finalists. Someone else said, have you started a new search? Now, this is not a question that Mr. Jones can answer, he's the interim manager. We need to know. I don't have the answer. When somebody says, are you gonna hire those two? I don't know that those two are still hanging out there. I don't know that there's going to be a final vote on selecting one of the two after the psychological test. Does anybody here care to say where we're at on that?
I thought, if my memory serves me right, I thought 5 council members voted to open the process back up again and do another search. Is that correct?
That's all I remember.
Okay, now where are we at with that? That's the second most common question is, how's your search going? I'll ask it. How's the search going?
I don't have an answer.
Well, if you read the patch, Mr. Jones is gonna be here till April of '21. So I don't know how we came to that.
Has it been voted on?
That's why I don't know how we came to that conclusion. I was kind of surprised to see that today.
So where are we at with the search? So, to be clear, Councilman Mudron, to be clear on that, it would be safe for me to say to those that continue to ask me, no, those two are off that last search is dead. It's over. The last search.
My understanding.
Okay.
Mike, can you come back? He walked away.
Who did?
Mike Turk.
We've got a problem with the audio. They're muted and we're trying to get them. They so we're actually calling him to get it fixed.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's all right. I mean, I think that's something that all 9 of us should hear. Can they hear us now?
They can hear us, they can speak.
Okay.
He's on the phone.
So, Councilman Mudron, I'm sorry, and so my question is, where are we at with that search that was voted on 5-3?
There was conversation about expanding the potential applicants. And should we look harder at what our job description is so we could attract potentially more candidates than we attracted before?
Well, we all know why we attracted so few. The 88 that we attracted only 2 years before versus the 25, of which 6 that met the ordinance. Councilwoman Quillman, correct me if I'm wrong, was it you or maybe I'm wrong, that said that GovHR, somebody had told me GovHR had said that, because you're on the legislative committee yourself, on Terry's legislative, said that we had a pretty darn good ordinance compared to what they've seen.
Actually, it wasn't GovHR.
Who was it?
It was the gentleman that gave the psychological tests.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. And he
gave-
looked at
when
our
gave the
ordinance.
report, and he looked at our ordinance, and he started out and said that we have one of the best ordinances, or not, best job descriptions for a city manager that he's ever seen.
So, again, are we waiting to do a search to lower the standards?
No.
Yeah.
At the last vote or conversation about sending this out, our HR department brought us a few different search firms. And we had council people voting no, that they didn't want to spend any extra money to go out to these other search firms and it didn't pass.
It would be a 5-3 vote if it went traditionally as the vote always has gone since last May and this all started.
I think we're a full council
Or
of
missing a
9
vote?
people that we would like everybody to be on the same page, that we're trying to move the city ahead.
Well, that's not necessarily going to happen. There's been a lot of that not happening, Councilman, since last May. I'll let you in on a secret. The reason we got so few applicants is because nobody wants to go through what Marty was put through. That's out there. That's out there in Google. That's out there.
It's your opinion, Larry.
That's the truth. Even GovHR said that. Way back at the beginning, they said that. You guys should wait at least 6 months. Anybody want to correct me on this?
I thought they said longer than that.
If not longer, before you even put a pole in the pond. So lowering the standards, no, we're not going to, I guess we could, 5-3. Lowering the standards of our ordinance has been said by professionals who do this from the psychological end, deal with government, saying, wow, you got one of the best, one of the highest, one of the tightest. No. We need to do a search with the standards we have, because this is the standards our residents deserve. Not some B-team junior league standard. Professional, 3rd largest city in the damn state.
Mike, can you talk at all? Are you muted?
Bernie?
Okay, yeah. Do you want to have a I don't know if you can hear me, Mike. You, me, and Jan have another committee meeting? I haven't asked you yet, but.
It's fine.
I'm sorry, I can't hardly hear you. Can you say it again, Bob?
Would you be interested in having another committee meeting with you, me, and Councilwoman Quillman?
Sure,
Jim?
I have no problem with that.
We can do that. And if others want to attend, do you have an idea what you want to change the ordinance to? Any Thoughts?
There was no question on changing, lowering any standards, Mayor. It was expanding the standards, and as we look back at the two meetings before, we had a number of candidates that would not have qualified now, and we had a number of qualified candidates this last time that we did not interview because they didn't have enough city council or city management experience. And there was conversation about, there's been a few names presented to a number of us, none of them have brought a resume, but I don't think any of them would qualify because I don't know that any of them have city manager experience or municipal experience, I think it would be the better term there.
Well, can I get a
And
clarification?
should that be looked at?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
As part of the legislative committee, and so is Mr. Dickinson and Terry Morris, who is the chair, we pored over that job description for weeks, hours, and we brought it back to council, and twice it was sent back to fix it. So we fixed it. I'm not sitting through another change in a job description because somebody wants somebody to have the job. And if they don't make the qualifications, then that's not my fault, or our fault. We have a very, very good job description in place, and I am not about to spend hours to change it to accommodate somebody that's out there that somebody might have in mind, which I think is what's going on here. And I'm not saying anything about anybody sitting in this council room. I know there are other folks out there that are pushing for other people to be in this job position. And if you don't make the qualifications, I can't vote for that person. And that's just my opinion. I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm not changing that job description.
Mayor?
Yeah.
With all due respect, Councilman Mudrin's comment that I don't know if you're convinced or if you consider that it's possible, that asking for a year of city manager job to fill the city manager's position is too demanding. I don't think that even makes sense. Of course they should have city manager positions. They shouldn't have assistant. They shouldn't be a director in another city. We are the third largest proud community who deserves somebody that's got at least one, that's all we have, am I correct? 1 year is the minimum.
I believe so.
Not 2 years, not 5 years, like you might get in another city like Chicago or Aurora. 1 year. I don't know how we lower that. Councilwoman, again, with all due respect, Councilman Mudrin, you just indicated that maybe Councilman Quillman's got onto something because you said there's 2 or 3 people or people that have not submitted resumes but are you looking to customize our ordinance to fit these people you know that I don't know? I don't know who they are.
Councilman Dickinson, you're on the legislative committee. Would you consider changing the ordinance?
Councilman Dickinson, you can't be heard. You need to hit your iPad and hit the microphone so you can unmute yourself. Same with you, Betty.
I guess I'll go with Councilman Morris. Would you be willing to consider changing?
If the rest of the committee was willing to do so, I would be willing.
Well, Councilwoman Coleman said she's not, so I'm asking you.
Change it to what? I mean, I guess that was your question.
Right.
What's the changes that this council is looking to make?
Any proposals?
I don't have any, just that it could be something that we could broaden our search. What would broaden our search and bring more people in? What narrowed our search? Was it the issue of you had to have a year's experience? I know we only interviewed a handful of people, and because the rest of those people didn't qualify on the application they sent in. And so they did not get past the initial, which is fine.
There was one candidate that stands out in my mind, and Jan and Mike, you voted against him. I voted for him without being specific. He had been a deputy city manager in 2 major cities. One's a major league city. So I thought that's something we would consider, but technically he did not qualify under the ordinance. But I don't remember too many others that applied that didn't qualify. I remember our committee rejected them for one reason or another.
And certainly, Mayor, if you don't mind, certainly I suppose Councilman Mudrin might be right. One theory would be that people didn't apply because 1 year of city manager experience for a city manager position in the third largest city is too demanding. We had nearly 100, we had 88 or 89 that applied several years ago. Another theory would be nobody wants to be drugged through the mud that Mr. Shanahan was drugged through. And I know you said that's my opinion, Pat, but come on, there's nobody in here who would seriously disagree publicly on that. There's a reason we went from almost 90 candidates down to 25 candidates.
Larry, when we had the vote a few months ago, a number, as you just said, I think the vote looked like it was going to be 5-3, not to spend money on going out for a new search firm. So are you serious that you'd like to have somebody? Are you willing to vote yes?
5-3 means you can start your search.
Whoa. This is a committee of the whole here. We all want this new city manager. Since you seem to have not wanted to vote for a new search firm to bring it in, what is your idea of bringing in a new city manager?
I'll answer that. So you find it
Thank you.
offensive that you can't get 9 votes to hire a new city manager and start the search and hire it, but you didn't think it was necessary to have 9 votes to fire Marty. Now explain the logic behind those 2 positions. All of a sudden 5 votes isn't enough? This is your mess. So,
And we're moving ahead, Larry.
no, we're not. We're waiting for you guys. You have your 5 votes, as Councilman Morris has said so many times. Please do something. The citizens want something
This
done.
is not a dictatorship. We are trying to work together.
So we should call a committee meeting. Mike, Jan, you guys are okay with that?
I'm okay.
I'll meet with you, but I'm not, the only thing I would change on that ordinance, and I don't know how we could do it legally, because I have to check with council, but I know there is a loophole there, which is what one of the candidates was counting on, to be living in the city of Joliet with an apartment, but going home on the weekends, wherever they lived. And I don't know how we can put that. You have to be living in the city of Joliet 24/7. So Marty, how do we get around that part? That was a mistake on our part. Had no idea that, I figure if we were to hire someone that they would move here and live here. But there's the glitch.
You just change the ordinance and say that you have to have permanent residence here in the city.
So that's the only thing I would change in our current job description.
Are you available this week to meet?
Yep, I'm available.
Mike?
Yeah, it can be.
Is Thursday too soon if we publish it?
Thursday. What, I could probably in the afternoon, like after 1
Need
o'clock.
48 hours, that's
All
not
right, so
enough
it's
time.
not, and we'll have to, Tuesday then, after the weekend?
Yeah,
Tuesday afternoon?
Next week, okay.
What time you get off work, Mike?
It'll be, 1 o'clock.
Oh.
Next Tuesday, I work till 1.
Jan,
I'm pretty sure I can make that, but I really have to go home and check.
all right. All right, we'll do something Tuesday afternoon, maybe early afternoon. And the council's invited to attend if you want to chime in.
Okay.
I think that's it.
I did receive a request for closed session this evening. Is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition or conveyance, pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
Second?
Been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Reardon. Aye. Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin. Councilwoman Gavin.
Is that aye?
Okay, sorry. Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillen.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whose request is this?